Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio on what will be the first Workbench Wednesday of 2024. Happy New Year! Hope you're having a great day wherever you are and whenever you happen to be watching this. Today I want to show you something that I don't often show, and that is the immediate aftermath. What the studio looks like here after I finish a big project. And I just finished the Santa Fe and St. Nick a little less than a week ago, and I haven't been up here. I've been spending the holidays with my family and just relaxing at home. And I finally got back up here, and I'm looking around, and man, this place is a disaster. It is such a mess. So, I thought a good theme for this Workbench Wednesday would be making is messy, and what to do about that. So join me, shall you, as I take a look around, and I'll show you how I recover the space and clean up after a big project and get everything back in working order and ready for the next project. Yes, my friends, making is messy, and I'm sure this won't be a great revelation to those of you who make stuff all the time like I do. But, there are people out there who are maybe new to all of this and don't realize the amount of mess that's involved and how much time you're going to be spending cleaning up after you're done with the project. So this video is for you guys. And I realize it might not be the sexiest topic for a video, but these Workbench Wednesdays are basically a vlog. This is all about what's happening right now at the studio, and today what's happening is it's a mess. It's not just the workbench either. The workbench is the worst of it, but the entire studio is it's a disaster right now. I'm getting ready to start on the Thunder Mesa 2.0, which is going to be very messy in and of itself. I'll be doing some demolition, lots of moving of things around, rearranging here in the studio. And right now I can barely walk in here. So I'm going to start here on the workbench. And usually what I like to do first is find all my tools that are scattered all over the place and put those away first. I'm actually pretty organized when it comes to my tools. I do have a place for everything. All of my, oops, put those in the wrong place. Knives, cutters, things like that go there. Razor saws, tweezers, things go right there. This drawer down here, screwdrivers, pliers, clamps, things like that. And look down here. I've even got a drawer just for tape and other sticky things. Rulers, scissors. This bottom drawer here is for soldering and electrical stuff. Also keep my heat gun in there. Most of my soldering tools fit in this little blue toolbox. That way I can take the whole thing out and work on stuff over at the layout or wherever. If you watch my videos regularly, you probably see all these little drawers back here. Well, that's where a lot of this stuff is supposed to go. Let's see, wire in there. Got tubes of glue, which I usually only use when I'm doing plastic models, like I did on the Santa Fe and St. Nick. Got a drawer for those. Even got a drawer up here just for bamboo skewers and coffee stir sticks. I use those so often. Now, if I've got parts and pieces left over from a build, like from all of those Merchant's Row kits, usually I'll just find a box like this and put them all together in there. So if I want to return to this at some future date, I'll still have all the bits and pieces. I'm just going to throw them all in one box here. Same with all this stuff here that, maybe didn't quite make the cut of the final build, but I might want to return to at some future date. I'll find it again next year and say, hey, I remember this stuff. Or I'll say, I have no memory of this stuff at all. Either way, it's a nice surprise. Yeah, with most of the tools and little bits and pieces of other kits put away, I like to move on, put the glue away. I've got a spot, I've got a shelf just for glue over here. All of my favorites out front and the ones I hardly ever use in the back. What I call the glue hospice. I just keep the old glue back there that I don't use until it dries out and I can throw it away. Probably got 20 bottles of white glue over here. And then next I'll put the paint away, usually, and I've got a rack up here on the wall. This is actually a nail polish rack. Very handy for these little hobby-sized bottles of paint. Also got this Lazy Susan over here, which in theory, seems like a good idea for paint, but the reality is I almost never use it. Yeah, things like matte finish, isopropyl alcohol, go right here where they're immediately handy. This doesn't need to be there. What the heck is this thing? I have a drawer down here for electronics junk. These are some little string LEDs that I might use for something someday. So those go in there. All other kinds of things that I thought might be handy or useful one of these days. And you never know. That's why I don't throw things away. It might show up at a future project. It's also helpful to be able to determine what's trash and what's not. I've got a bunch of jars of paint here that I mixed up for various things, and most of them are dried out now. Yeah, I'm going to toss all of these. I'm going to keep this one. That's my scenic base color for Bandit Canyon Railway. I want to hold on to that. The way I work, I also end up with a lot of bits and pieces of cardboard at the end of a project. That one's worth keeping. The rest of these are pretty much trash. I have a drawer for all of these lids that I use to mix paint in and dip glue from, right down here. Doesn't go in there. It goes down here. Big tubes of paint down there in the bottom. One thing I try never to leave overnight are dirty paintbrushes. And someone asked me not long ago how I clean my paintbrushes. They were kind of apologetic, like, oh, is that a dumb question? I'm like, no, that's a great question. And I'll show you exactly what I use and what I've used for years. This is primarily for acrylic paint. I get a bar of soap, like just plain ivory soap, and put it in a Tupperware like this. And then you just take the brush and you swirl it around on that bar of soap. This one's really nasty because, I've used it a lot. It's almost time to replace it. Just take and then, rub that on the palm of your hand until, you don't see any color anymore from the paint. And you can check down here in the ferrules too. The ferrule of the brush, that's this metal part right here. The base of the brush, that's where paint, particularly acrylic paint, likes to collect. And the thing about the bar soap is that it contains glycerin, and that's going to help condition the fibers of your brush, whether they are natural fibers or synthetic or whatever. It'll help them from getting, fuzzy and dried out. Try to keep all the different primers together, the colors separate so they're easier to find. Oftentimes I'll write a date on the cans too with a Sharpie so I know how old that particular can of paint is. Like right here. Wow, this is from 2021. Still going. Personal protective equipment right there. I keep the solvents and things up on this top shelf, basically as far away from the heater as possible, since they are flammable. Now, this is where I keep all of my scenery stuff, right below the spray paint. Ground foam, foliage, weeds, things like that. Armatures, Sculpey, gold foam for carving, all the different ways of making water, all the different materials for that. That all goes over here. Now this is starting to look a little better. Now this item right here, any fellow draftsman out there will be familiar with this. This is a draftsman's duster. Back in the old days, when everything was drawn by hand, you did a lot of erasing, and this was for cleaning up eraser crumbs. Well, it's also very handy for cleaning the small bits of debris off of your work surface. I can lift up these cutting mats and do a little bit of that. In fact, I'm going to take these all the way off for a minute. Yes, my friends, making is messy, and a lot of times that mess is, little tiny, almost microscopic bits of junk, dust, foam dust, sawdust, snow dust, plastic dust, all of that. Now, the top of my workbench is actually a slab of corian. This is a corian countertop that people would have in their kitchens, faux granite. I got this from my father-in-law, who used to be in the countertop business. Now I'll go over everything with a little simple green, a couple of paper towels. The thing about using a liquid cleaner like this is it's not so much about, getting those last bits of paint off of there. I don't care about that. That doesn't bother me. It's actually about getting that fine layer of dust off that the brush or the vacuum are not going to pick up. You can feel the fine grains of dust on here. I'll wipe this off. Maybe it's time to rotate this one 180 degrees. Get the clean edge down on this side. Pretty abusive to my cutting mats. I usually go through one like this a year. And what we're going for here is, as smooth a surface as possible. Don't forget, I got the whole other side here too. That's what I like about these Fiskars cutting mats as opposed to maybe the X-Acto ones, is they're two-sided. So when you wear one side out, you just flip it over. Not quite there yet though. And with that, I think the workbench itself is in pretty good shape. Now I just need to clean up the rest of the studio. Now, one thing I don't think any studio or maker space or workshop should be without is a couple of shop vacs. This is the smaller of the two that I have, but the one I use the most often. You often see it in my videos. I'll be cleaning up during a project or after a project. This is a Craftsman 2.5 gallon, 1.75 horsepower. Great for small jobs around the studio like this. By the way, this is when I almost invariably find that tiny little missing piece that I dropped on the floor during a build and searched for it for an hour and couldn't find it. And then it's usually like, oh, there it is right there. Long after it's too late to use. Then I'll give everything a once over with the old upright back. Now this area back here is kind of my secondary workbench, where I keep my sander, my bandsaw over here by the window. All of this is going to change though. as I get started on Thunder Mesa 2.0, that's not just going to alter the layout, it's going to alter the whole studio. Everything is going to get shifted around. It's going to open up some more space. I'd like to have a workbench set up where it's a little bit easier to film, you know, maybe with an overhead camera, some better lighting. I'm always looking to improve the quality of the videos. Here's something new in the studio. Computer. I've resisted having one in here for the longest time because I spend so much time on them at home, either editing video or doing graphics or whatever. But I finally figured out that this will save me a lot of time, having one right up here that I can, you know, reference and do work on while I'm working on builds and projects. So brought the old iMac up here. This is the old one. I've got a much newer one at home, but this one still works just fine. Yeah, and all of this back here behind the layout is going to be changing real soon, so not much point in me spending too much time on it yet. In fact, other than sweeping up, there's really not much more I can do without actually starting in on Thunder Mesa 2.0. So I guess the moral of the story here today is that yes, making is messy, but, you know, take a little time, you can always clean it up. I usually don't let it get as bad as it got here. Usually about halfway through a project I'll stop and clean, you know, if it's getting really bad, and put things away. That way when I come in the next day, it's just not this overwhelming, oh God, I can't find anything, you know, where did I leave off, all that. Because, you know, mess leads to confusion in your brain about where you're going next, what you're going to do next, what you were planning on doing next. So, you know, it's good to keep a tidy shop if you can. That said, as has often been pointed out, a totally clean workbench is evidence of a sick mind. Well, nothing left to do now except take out the trash. I want to thank you all for hanging out with me today in this little housekeeping vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, you can also follow Thunder Mesa over on Instagram at thunder.mesa and see what's new on the soon-to-be all-new and improved Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. Keep moving forward, my friends. Adios for now.